Welcome back to the Healing Voice podcast. My name is Lance Howard, and I'd like to welcome you to Season 11, Episode 2, titled The Greatest in the Kingdom and the Greatest Commandment. Now that we know the kingdom or the realm of empowerment is available to us, and it is to be our primary focus, how do we continually operate in that realm of power? You can read along with me if you will go to the website lancehoward.net, which is the same as thv-tv.com, and you'll scroll across the menu bar to I Am University and then down to Bible Redefined, and you'll see Bible Redefined Library. And that's where you will find this first passage that I will read to you, which is my own translation from Matthew chapter 18, verses 1 through 4, titled The Greatest in the Kingdom. And I also must remind us that the word kingdom from the ancient language is actually a feminine gendered term. So it's more like queendom than it is kingdom. Here's verse 1. The students came to Yeshua, which is the name that today we say Jesus, and sometimes we say Yeshua, but I've translated it as Yeshua. The students came to Yeshua discussing the topic of who is the greatest, perhaps with ideas to the most accomplishments. So who is the greatest in the empowering vision ruling council of sacred unity? The empowering vision ruling council of sacred unity is normally translated as the kingdom of God, but I have translated it as the empowering vision ruling council of sacred unity. So here's verse 1 again. Students came to Yeshua discussing the topic of who is the greatest in the empowering vision ruling council of sacred unity. Verse 2, Yeshua invited a young child to himself and brought everyone's attention to the child in the middle. He said, "This is a firm truth. Unless your heart is changed and you become like little children so that you take on their nature, you will not be able to experience the empowering vision ruling council of sacred unity." Another way of saying that, verse 3, is, "By the earth on which I stand, if you do not re-enter the door of childhood and rediscover the wholehearted trust you felt in your parents' shelter, you will not enter the reign of vision power vibrating through the all." Or another way that I translated that verse, Amen. Solid as the earth on which we stand, if you do not rediscover the simple and whole trust you felt in childhood, you will not enter the reign of vision powering, vibrating through the universe. I'll read that again. Amen. Solid as the earth on which we stand, if you do not rediscover the simple and whole truth you felt in childhood, you will not enter the reign of vision power, vibrating through the universe. Here's verse 4. So everyone who chooses to humble themselves back to the heart condition of a child, they are the greatest within the empowering vision ruling council of sacred unity. Or another way of translating verse 4. Like this child, the person who softens the rigid within, who can freely flow and go anywhere, will grow and multiply in power, by, with, among, in, as the reign of the universal unity. Another way to translate verse 4. Like this child, whoever softens what is stiff and unwilling within, freely moving here and there, will grow and multiply in power, by, with, among, and in the reign of the cosmic unity. That is my translation of Matthew 18, 1 through 4. I will go ahead and read the typical way it's translated. It says, "At the same time came the disciples to Jesus, saying, 'Who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?' Verse 2, and Jesus called a little child to him and set him in the midst of them. Verse 3, and Jesus said, 'Verily, I say to you, except you be converted and become as little children, you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Final verse. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So you can see the way it's typically translated is, well, I guess I would say it's simple. Simple in that you can just read straight through it, and then a lot of interpretation is just left up to your mind. Like, what does it mean to be humble like a child, right? There's no explanation. It says, unless you be converted and become like a child. Like, well, what is that supposed to mean? And entering into the kingdom of heaven, what is that supposed to mean? There's, in my opinion, as what I like to call a quantum level translator, there's no reason to leave so much room for loose interpretation, so much room for ambiguity. The ancient language is so rich in poeticism and parallelism and metaphors and simile. It is prophetic writing in that it is multidimensional. So as a translator, we must take the responsibility to understand the universal applications of the language, not just how we use these words today, as if the way we speak is the only way that is worth speaking. Okay, that would be very small-minded. That would be very closed-minded. That would be an ignorant way of translating. But when you read the typical Bible, that is exactly what you're reading. A very watered-down version of these incredible ancient truths. I can imagine that this little child who was brought into the midst of the group, right, as an example, he was brought into the group, and Yeshaya is saying, look at this little child, and unless you become like a little child, you cannot know what this great domain of power is all about or how to utilize it. I can imagine this child was a bit shy when he or she was invited into the circle of adults. And it seems to me that, especially in this ancient cultural context, young children are humble and they are gentle, they are respectful, playful, and naturally they trust their parents. They trust their parents. They trust parental figures, their guardians. They have a certain natural faith that things are as they are, and that's okay. They do not get tangled in thoughts of the future or the past like adults do. They do not think their acceptance is based on anything great that they have done. They do not question their self-worth. They simply are who they are, and they allow you to be who you are. Their faith is a simple trusting. There is a lesson of identity in these words that are presented by Yeshaya. In part, that quote-unquote greatness has little to do with status of any sort. That is part of the lesson, but that is also the truth. The truth of greatness has little to do with status of any sort, which is exactly the opposite of how we think or how we've been taught to think or what our culture or our world is telling us. Greatness is the result of the condition of the heart. In truth, in spirit reality or spiritual reality or spirituality, greatness is the result of the condition of the heart and the influence it has on a person's sight, their ability to perceive and see things clearly, as well as their decision making, because that would be the order, the ability to see things clearly and then make a decision based on what you are seeing. But if you're not seeing things clearly, then your decision will not be an accurate decision. It will not be a good decision. It probably will not be a healthy decision. It is a wonderful transformation for an adult to become like a child in this sense, one that frees from the delusion of separation, competition, and division. I'll say that again. It's a wonderful transformation for an adult to become like a child in the sense that one is freed from the delusion of separation, competition, and division. And this is what makes you the greatest in the domain of self-empowerment. It means something like this. You can only step into the great shoes, the awesome steps, your true identity, and the full power, the full universal, creative, consciously aware power when you become like a child, which is to be free of the delusion of separation, competition, and division. And in verse 3, which typically says, "Truly I say to you, except you be converted and become as little children, you can't enter into the kingdom." And one of the 3 ways I translated it was, "By the earth on which I stand, if you do not re-enter the door of childhood and rediscover the wholehearted trust you felt in your parents' shelter or care, you will not enter the reign of vision power vibrating throughout the all." Okay, so that verse 3, once again, we must correct our Western way of thinking and redefine certain words or unlearn the wrong definitions, because to be converted or converting has little to do with a decision to follow a specific religion, but that's typically how that word is used in a religious or spiritual context. Like, oh, that person's a convert, or I'm a convert, or I'm converting, or someone's converting, means they are choosing to leave one style of life for a more specifically religious style or branch of religion. The word converted is speaking of a change by one's own decision to turn around. And this is what has also been called repentance. Repentance is a divine change of heart in which the soul comes back into its divine rhythm in unity with the great intelligence that we have called God. This divine rhythm is simply being in sync or aligning with the sacred breath, wind, spirit that we all breathe. Okay, the sacred breath, wind, spirit is what religion calls the Holy Spirit. But it is more accurately translated the sacred breath, wind, spirit. So this whole notion about being converted or converting to become like a child is just saying changing the way you think. It's a divine change of heart that allows you to come back into divine rhythm, to come back into unity with the great I am, or the great intelligence we have called God. The gentleness, love, trust, innocence, single-mindedness, and wholeheartedness of a child is the state to which we must return to enter into the reigning power of the great being we have called God. The reigning power is another way of saying the kingdom, or the domain of true empowerment, or the queendom of the great I am. This is spiritual maturity, and this is how you fulfill the greatest in the kingdom. It's not about, the term greatest doesn't mean, oh, I'm the best, or I'm the first compared to all of you. It means, no, you finally reach the goal. Who is the greatest? Is like saying, who finally reaches the completion? Who finally reaches the perfection? Who finally reaches the holisticness or the wholeness? Who finally steps into the sacred shoes that they were meant to step into and really fill it out, really fill the space of that perfection, which is to say, really fulfill the purpose, really live out the calling, really absorb the invitation and live and breathe it and think it every single day. This is what is meant by who is the greatest. So you can see how the way we speak these terms in English is not the way of the ancient Eastern mindset. When we think of the greatest, we think of who's at the front of the line, who wears the crown, who sits on the throne, who's the winner, right? There's all this, and all of that is made up of this underlying tone of division and separation, and there's fear and there's anxiety and there's concern because, well, if they're first, where am I? Or why can't I be first? Why can't I be the greatest? And that is not what the ancient mindset is about. That is not what these words actually mean. The greatest in the kingdom is another way of saying you have a divine role to fill. Now, will you step into your greatest and fulfill it or not? And Yeshua, the one we now call Jesus, is saying the only way to step into the greatest is to become like a child. Essentially, it means to humble yourself and be able to follow the lead of the great I am, and you will be led right into the doorway of all the self-empowerment you could ever want. But here's the problem. You believe you have to fight and work hard in order to empower yourself. You think you have to manipulate people in order to get the things you want. So you use manipulation, which is like one way we manipulate people is by trying to please them, trying to make them happy. We do this in job interviews. We do this with our bosses or superiors or managers, definitely our family members, most likely our parents. We're always trying to fit in with others. Let's just put it that way. But that is manipulation if we're not being ourselves. And then we have to ask, well, I want to be myself, but who am I? I don't even know who I am. If you know anything about my teaching and what THV is all about, it's about identity and purpose, knowing who you are and knowing what you're here to do. That's why we're talking about being the greatest in the kingdom today. It is all about your identity and your purpose and you stepping into it and fulfilling it. And it actually is very, very easy to do. But you must let go of these religious ideas and this Western way of thinking that divides everything into some kind of, division and conquer, divide and conquer. How do I get a leg up? How do I set myself up ahead of everyone else, as if there's some kind of war that we're always playing out? So on one hand, we want to fit in, but on the other hand, we're trying to manipulate everyone so we can get what we want. And in spirituality, true spirituality is spirit reality. And that is the universe that we live in. It is spirit reality. And in reality, spirit reality, which is true reality, not the reality you think you know because of the way the world works. That is the matrix. That is a false reality. In spirit reality, in true reality, the only way to be the greatest is to fulfill your identity and purpose. So if you haven't read or utilized my book, The Identity Process, that is what the book is for. And there's a manual in there. I will even send you the manual, which is from chapter 5 of the book. The manual is an essential part of the book. I will send you that chapter for free to help you get a start on understanding who you are and what you're here to do. It will guide you through a number of assessments and ask you a bunch of questions about everything in your world, everything in your life, to help you come to a nice conclusion of who you are and what you're here to do. Second to that, and I'll mention this a little bit more later, the Tribe of I Am is a meeting that I will be hosting. It will be virtual. You are invited. The Tribe of I Am is all about learning these types of things. What does it mean to be the greatest in the kingdom? How do I fulfill my identity and purpose to step into my true power? And I'm going to tell you now, your true power is the power that creates worlds. And you are using it every single day. If you don't know how you're doing that, listen to the last episode. Go back to episode 1 of this season. I talk about how you're using the power that creates worlds every single day without realizing that's what you're doing. But if you will realize you've been using the power, you will then come to understand that you can use the power to create anything you want. That is what the Tribe of I Am is about, having those types of discussions and guidance in meditation, learning how to overcome the lies that habitually get told in our mind so we can begin to create what we actually prefer to experience in our life. That was the greatest in the kingdom. Now I would like to share the greatest commandment from Matthew chapter 22, verse 36 through 40. Again, just go to the website, lancehoward.net. If you'd like to read along, you will see I Am University in the menu bar across the top. And then you'll see Bible Redefined. When you scroll over I Am University, you will see Bible Redefined. And then you'll see Bible Redefined Library as like a drop down from there. And then you can search for Matthew 22, 36 through 40 just by hitting Command Find if you use a Mac, or I forget what the other key function is if you're on a PC where you can search for words on the page, but it's Command Find on a Mac. Maybe it's Control Find on a PC. Matthew 22, 36 through 40. This is about the greatest commandment. Here's how I've translated it. Verse 36. Master Teacher, which is the greatest of the life principles? Which is the greatest of the authoritative precepts and sacred prescriptions? Yeshua said to him, breathe in conscious connection and affection for and with the Sacred One, the Great I Am. Do this from the deepest center of yourself, from the interior place of courage, respect, and devotion. Do this with all the inner focus of your life force and vital energy, your very breath of life. Do this from the fire of your most true emotion and feeling. Have simple presence with conscious awareness of goodwill and affection within, for, and as sacred unity. The interdependent one in the sameness of, with, and by unity in diversity. The essence and nature of the cooperative, interconnected, self-worthy universe. The original self-presence of I Am. The invaluable energetic connection that holds the elements of life together, the great connection and affection principle of safety, closeness, and intimacy, the medicine and the cure, the best conclusion, the foundational character of true greatness, the one true word and one true breath, the ever-present connection and original self-presence of I Am, the intelligent power and force of life, the one true moral and ethic that gives definition to all others, the original relationship of self to self, breath to breath, I am to I am. Another way to translate that verse 37 is, allow compassion to be born from your inner womb for the great sacred unity in the form that impresses you most deeply. Allow this adoration to flow with and through your entire self, your whole awakening and passion, your subconscious and your instinctive mind, and with all of your life force energy. Or, the final way I translated it, adore the great I Am, your true self and power, with all your inner passion, feeling, affection, and attention. Now, verse 38. That is the foremost and principal. The secondary resembles it and is together with it. Breathe in conscious connection and affection for and with your fellow person. Do this from the deepest center of yourself, from the interior place of courage, respect, and devotion. Do this with all the inner focus of your life force and vital energy, your very breath of life. Do this from the fire of your most true emotion and feeling. Have simple presence with conscious awareness of goodwill and affection within, for, and as sacred unity, the interdependent one and the sameness of unity in diversity, the essence and nature of the cooperative, interconnected, self-worthy universe, the original self-presence of I am, the invaluable energetic connection that holds the elements of life together, the great connection and affection principle of safety, closeness, and intimacy, the medicine and the cure, the best conclusion, the foundational character of true greatness, the one true word, the one true breath, the ever-present connection, the original self-presence of I am, the intelligent power and force of life, the one true moral and ethic that gives definition to all others, the original relationship of self to self, breath to breath, I am to I am. Or, a shorter way to translate verse 38, give birth to compassion, the deepest warmth for those who are near you, yet unfamiliar as you do for your own self, and the part of it that feels like a neighbor or stranger inside your own subconscious community. Verse 40. On these dual principles hang the complete and whole of the guiding principles and the sacred messengers. All of the guiding principles are complete in these two as one. Why is that such a mouthful? The part about simple presence and conscious awareness and sacred unity and the interdependent one and the sameness of unity, the essence of the and nature of the cooperative, interconnected, self-worthy universe, the original self-presence, the invaluable energetic connection, the great connection and affection principle, the medicine and the cure, the best conclusion, the one true breath, breath to breath, I am to I am, self to self, ever-presence, self-presence of I am, intelligent power and force of life. Why? Why all of those words? So many words because that is the only, or that is, I humbly submit that that is the height and the width and the depth of this word love, because it is typically translated this way. And I'm going to paraphrase just a little bit for time's sake. But the question was, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? And it says, typically says, Jesus said to him, you shall love. And there it is. You shall love. I am also submitting to you that today, in our language, in our culture, our mindset, our matrix, we do not understand what love is. So all of those words about all of this connection and affection and conscious awareness, self to self, breath to breath, I am to I am, sacred unity, the greatest principle, so on and so forth in the universe, all of that is describing what love truly is. So in verse 37, it typically reads, Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And verse 39 now, the second commandment is like the first one. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Verse 40 now, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Okay, that's how simply it's translated. So, unfortunately, that will leave you to read it and you'll go, oh, I just have to love God with all my heart, mind, and soul and love my neighbor as myself. Well, that sounds simple. Doesn't it? Doesn't that sound so simple? So then why is it so difficult? It's difficult because you don't truly understand it. Its simplicity does not allow you to fully comprehend. The THV translation, the Bible Redefined Project, and the way I translate love as a breathing in conscious connection and affection for and with the sacred one from the deepest center of yourself, which is the interior place of courage, respect, and devotion, and that with all your inner focus and your life force and your vital energy and your breath of life, the fire of your true emotion and feeling, and having simple presence with conscious awareness of goodwill and affection within, for, and as sacred unity And sacred unity is just another way of translating this great, intelligent, creative being we've called God. Okay, the interdependent one and the sameness of, with, and by unity in diversity, the essence and nature of the cooperative, interconnected, self-worthy universe, the original self-presence, the invaluable energetic connection that holds everything together, the great connection and affection principle, which is safety and closeness and intimacy. It is the medicine and the cure. It is the best conclusion. It is the foundational character of true greatness, which goes with what we read from the last chapter of Matthew about if you want to be the greatest, you must become like a child. Okay, you see how it's all working together about connection and affection and unity and the courage and the respect and the devotion and the true emotion and the true feeling, the one true word and the one true breath, the ever-presence, the original self-presence, the intelligent power and life force, the one true moral and ethic that gives definition to all others. The original relationship of self to self, which means me to myself, me to the great I am, and me to you. That is self to self in its multi-dimensional layers. Breath to breath. That means how I breathe with me, how I breathe in rhythm with the great I am, and how I breathe in rhythm with you. That is the truth in its multi-dimensional layers, and I am to I am. That means me to the great I am, and me to you. That is the truth in its multi-dimensional layers. You see, the truth is not just one angle on an issue. The truth will comprise all of the angles as one. That is the depth of the translation work that I'm offering here. And this is love. Everything I just have read and tried to repeat in different ways over and over again, this is what it means to love. This is what it means to love. And I'm not even saying that accurately because if you're listening to what I'm saying, you might pick up on the fact that love is not a verb. Love is a being and a beingness. Love is the reality. So you can't do love. You have to be love. So when it says, again, in English, the way it's typically translated, it appears like a verb because that's how we talk in English, but that doesn't mean it's right. We talk wrong. We talk ignorantly. We say, I love this or that. That is incorrect. We have translated it as you should love God and you should love your neighbor, but that is incorrect. The accurate translation says breathe in conscious connection. Okay, that's what you can do. You can't do love, but you can breathe in conscious connection and affection for the sacred one. And you can do the same thing with your neighbor. That's how you express the beingness of love. You breathe in conscious connection and affection. You settle into the deep center of who you are from this internal place of courage, respect, and devotion. And you recognize the unity in it all, how we all share one breath and one I amness. There is only one true self happening. This is the great connection and affection principle that holds everything together. That is love. You can't do love. Love just is, and it always has been, and it always will be. You're just learning to become aware of what always has been and always is and always will be at the very core of your own self. That is how you fulfill the greatest commandment. That is how you become the greatest in the kingdom. You allow love to transform you into a gentle, trusting child. So he said, loving God is the first commandment, and that would make sense when you look at the 10 commandments, because the first 10 are about putting the great I am first and above all. And then he said the second commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. And that would make sense because the second 5 of the 10 commandments are about how to treat people. So we know we have a true summary of what the greatest commandment is and which one is secondary to it. It's important to know in verse 36, the word for commandment in Hebrew and Greek is more accurately translated as prescription or precept or principle upon which a healthy life is created and sustained. You see how the word commandment just like, it can kind of put a bad taste in your mouth. You know, it's a commandment, as if you're being driven or forced like a slave. Why translate it that way if the word can more accurately be translated as prescription, precept, or principle upon which a healthy life is created and sustained? Doesn't that clarify things and make it easier to implement, easier to wrestle with? And that's what we're here to do, by the way, is to wrestle with God. That's another story or another podcast for another day. But wrestling with God becomes simple or easy when you realize that it's not really a command and it's not so difficult. What it is a prescription. You trust your doctor to give you a prescription, right? What it is a precept and a principle. Principles make sense to us. Principles are always, or I should say typically, self-evident. We can get in line with principles and precepts and prescriptions pretty easily. But commandments, that's a different feeling. It's a different vibe. And I'm telling you, that is not the feeling, the vibe, or the rhythm of the great I am. Commandment is not the feeling, vibe, or rhythm of God. Because the scripture is clear that God is love. And if you've been listening, you've heard about how amazing love is. Love doesn't give commands. Love doesn't give conditions. That might make us ask, well, what about the God of the Old Testament? It seems like that God definitely had some conditions and some commands to hand to mankind. And that's a difficult conversation to have. Off the top of my head, since that question has popped up, I will just say this, and then perhaps we'll come back to it in another podcast. The Old Testament God, you must understand what God is. Religion has taught us to think of who God is. But the who is not the important thing. You know why it's not? Because how we think of personhood is not how the great intelligence thinks of personhood. When we think of a person, the first thing we want to know is stuff like, well, what's their name and what's their race? And the truth is, those things are actually not important. A person's name and their race is not important. In fact, there's only one race. So I'm only further uncovering how ignorantly we speak. There's only one race. So we don't need to ask what a person's race is. That is division and fear. That is the matrix of our world. We have to let it go. We have to forget about it. It's not real. They're just made up ideologies that confuse us and cause us to miss or skip over or be blind to the truth. The word for name means light, energy, essence, character, which is why when Moses asked God what his name was, God didn't give him a name. God said, I am that I am, which you have been hearing me refer to over and over again when I say the great I am. So what I'm saying is, God doesn't have a name in the sense that we think of it. So who God is in relation to how we think of personhood is irrelevant. But what God is will change our lives. And you've heard me say it as I've been reading about the Great Commandment here. What is God? God is conscious awareness. The first, the beginning and the end, the one and only. If anything has a sense of self or a sense of existence or a sense of I am, that is the presence of God in and through that thing or that being or that sentience. That is what the great intelligent, conscious, aware being is. The point that I'm trying to make here is that conscious awareness is not a three-dimensional expression. So it has to see and learn the three-dimensional expression just as you and I are seeing it and learning it day by day. We go about this and go about that, and we realize, oh, that wasn't quite what I was trying to accomplish, but now I can move on and do it differently. And this is probably very challenging to hear, but I'm going to continue the thought and just finish it succinctly and straight to the point. The three-dimensional experience was brand new to the great conscious awareness at some point. So there was a learning curve even for the great conscious awareness on how to relate to all things, especially humans, because humans have the power of conscious awareness, which is why the scriptures say they're made in the image of God. It means they have the ability to reflect the mind of God and the power of God. Not just the ability, but they actually do reflect the mind of God, whether they like it or not, or whether they are aware of it or not. You are the first person of your experience. Wherever you're listening to the sound of my voice, no one is hearing me from the same perspective as you. You are the first person. And you have conscious awareness. And your conscious awareness is reporting or uploading all of this data from that experience you're having, this experience we are having, back to the one true conscious awareness, which is the one true great I am that is expressing and listening in and seeing through you and me and through all of us. So all of us are uploading all this information to the one true mind from our brains, our little egotistical minds. So that's why there's a shift from the Old Testament to the New Testament, where suddenly the great being called God does not appear to be so maybe vengeful or angry, because conscious awareness also has upgrades to make. No different than you and I. We grow up. We mature. We realize we did some things that we don't want to repeat. I'm saying to you, the great conscious awareness has a learning curve in the three-dimensional experience just like we do. But because there are trillions of lives that have been lived, the great conscious awareness upgrades way faster, way smarter. I'll stop there on that subject, but I'll move on to verse 37 about love. This love is about alignment, coherence, and congruence. There is no greater alignment, coherence, and congruence than self to self, I am to I am. Aligning heart, mind, and soul, feeling, thinking, and acting in harmony with the one and only is the fulfillment of the greatest experience a person can have. It is the fulfillment that makes you the greatest in the kingdom. From this state of peace, all the good flows into manifestation. The great I am is the one true self and is therefore your true self. The great I am is the one true self and is therefore your true self that is being expressed in the unique mind and personality of you, whatever your name is. But all of that is an illusion. Your ego mind, your name, your personality, that's an illusion that covers the true self in you, the true self as you. You are the true self expressing itself in a unique program and algorithm called you, whatever your name is. You absolutely must have been in love with this one first and above all else. You absolutely must have love with this first one, first and above all else. You absolutely must have been in love with this one first and above all else. In Aramaic, a neighbor is anyone who draws near to us or somehow appears in close proximity. Neighbors are not to be identified as friends, enemies, or family. They are simply there as members of our self, as inner and outer community. With all your heart, soul, and mind. Okay, to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind is like saying with all your feeling, all your coherence, all of your thought. And the Gospel of Mark adds strength to this list, which is like saying energy, power, and emotion. Regardless, the point is something like, with every fiber of your being, you are to breathe with connection and affection to the great I am and the sacred unity, which is the great I am. And this verse, which is the verse I'm talking about, is verse 37 about loving the Lord your God with all your heart. Is very reminiscent of Proverbs 1, chapter 7. On the fear of the Lord, it says something like, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And it ties right into this idea of loving the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. It means revere the great I am and respect the great I am more than anything else. That is what the fear of the Lord is all about. But you see again how in this far too simple and watered down English translation, where it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, it doesn't point you in the right direction. Why use the word fear at all? That is a negative word. There's nothing positive about fear. It is an improper translation. It leads people down the wrong road. The word fear means reverence. It means adoration. It means honor. It means respect. Verse 39, only after completing the most important principle, which is love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, can you truly complete the second principle, which is love your neighbor as yourself. Who and what is yourself is what we've been talking about here. That is the great I am, the very core and essence of your beingness and my beingness and every being around you. If you do not have or are not in love with that, capital T, you cannot properly have love for anyone else. Properly meaning fully have love. The fulfillment, the satisfaction, the completion, the perfection of love for others. Even those who you think you love so dearly, the love that you think you have for them is lacking if you do not have love for the great I am, which is in and by and with and as you. That is your relationship to God, your relationship to the one true self, your relationship to the great I am. That's where it all begins, but the world has told us it is the other way around. The world has said, you are worthy when others, in one way or another, make you feel worthy. And that's a lie. It's a flat out lie. Verse 40, it should be clear that love is the unifying piece or ingredient which brings unity in diversity or sacred unity. I think I've said this before, but unity in diversity or sacred unity is just another way of translating the word from which we get our three-letter word, God. So I'll read that again. It should be clear that love is the unifying piece or ingredient which brings God, or brings the experience of the wholeness, the unity in diversity, right? Why is it in diversity? Because of you and me. We are diverse expressions of the one, but there is only one. So that is unity in diversity. Do you get it? Can you feel it? Can you sense it? That I am you and you are me and we are the only one. The only one is us. This is unity in diversity. It is sacred unity. And this is why love is the unifying piece or the unifying ingredient. If you do not understand love, you miss what the whole point of this experience is about. It's about peace, bringing peace and harmony to duality, bringing peace and harmony to division. Thanks for listening to the Healing Voice podcast. Do you have questions related to how you can apply this knowledge to your personal life? You can make a free appointment to speak with me. Send me an email at thvtv@protonmail.com. Put free appointment in your subject title. Put free appointment podcast in your subject. The tribe of I Am, I would like to mention that again and invite you. You can read a little bit about Tribe of I Am on the website, lancehoward.net. Scroll across to I Am University and then down and you will see Tribe of I Am. Tribe of I Am is open to everyone with awareness that this tribe is that of the human family, and that we have been taught to focus on how different we are and have allowed differences to define our source of worth and belonging. Tribe of I Am knows that at the core, we all hold the same values and are made of the same substance. Though our diversity is evident, it is not an issue of division. Our diversity is an issue of beauty. Tribe of I Am exists for those who choose to acknowledge our seeming imperfection that can be remedied. We choose to realize who we are, what we are here to do, live true values, and experience our full potential. Tribe of I Am is community beyond walls, beyond gender, beyond religion, and beyond all borders. In Tribe of I Am, we hold healthy, facilitated, creative, community-based conversations where everyone has a chance to share if they want. We discuss the nature of our humanity, how we might become better humans, and what impact that may have on the world as we are aware of its shortcomings. And there's a quote here from the Black Panther movie by King T'Challa. He says, "We must find a way to look after one another as if we were one single tribe." Email me at thvtv@protonmail.com if you would like to visit the virtual meeting of Tribe of I Am. If you haven't heard the latest THV single, you can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, and every other major music streaming platform. I'll leave the links in the description. Don't forget, THV is a donation-based service that believes in sacred economics, that true value is found in the expression of our heart and how we spend our time, our attention, and our energy, because those are the true currency we've been given in this life. Your donation makes everything possible: the teachings, the books, the music, and the coaching. If you believe in the messages of THV and that they can make a difference, please consider sending a donation of any size. I'll leave the links in the description. Thanks again for listening. Tell someone about THV today.